This is the solutions or the tutorial for Chapter 9, Section 6, Day number 2, Quadratic Formula and the Discriminant. And that's what we're going to end up using for the second part of this lesson. So the first one you'll end up seeing is just using that quadratic formula again. So remember, as what we had written before, it was negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And again, everything needs to be in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that's what we have to do here first, is move the 20 over to the other side. So when I do that, I've got negative 3p squared plus 17p equals negative 20. So it's not equals anymore, but just minus 20. So let me fix that. So minus 20 equals 0. And so now I can pull the a term, the b term, and the c term from this problem and go ahead and substitute these values into that quadratic formula. So it's going to be the opposite of b, so negative 17, plus or minus the square root of 17 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 3, times c is negative 20, all over 2 times by negative 3. So we still have that negative 17, plus or minus the square root. Now 17 squared is 289, and then we have to multiply 12 times by 20. Notice how you have 3 negatives. An odd number of negatives is going to make a negative, and that makes negative 100, actually 240, so let me fix that. 12 times 2 makes 24, add a 0 to the end, so that's what we'll get. So this is all over negative 6. So when I do that subtraction, leaves me with a 9 and a 4, and that is a perfect square. So we'll be able to come up with some rational roots here. So I just bring everything else down. So negative 17 plus or minus the square root of 49 is 7 all over negative 6. So I have two problems to set up. Negative 17 minus 7 all over negative 6, and I also have the negative 17 plus 7. This is all over negative 6. So when I do the work here, I end up getting a negative 24 over negative 6, which is 4. And over here I get negative 10 over negative 6, which ends up giving me a negative 5/3. So these are my positive 5/3. Let me fix that because I have the two negative signs. So those are my two solutions. And we'll move on to the next problem. And this is where we end up using this item called the discriminant. So let's take a look at it. So the discriminant allows us to find out how many solutions we have. So let me go ahead and move this down. It'll be a little bit easier here. And when I use the discriminant, I'm going to just use a portion of that quadratic formula. And this is the way it ends up going. So I start off with, if I look at the entire formula, it goes negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, the discriminant is this section right here. And it's actually not even the radical sign, it's just the b squared minus 4ac. But I'm going to leave the radical sign in there because you see, if you have a b squared minus 4ac and you have it equaling a positive, that means that you're going to have two solutions. There will be two roots. And if the same number, and again, it's easier to see when you have the radical sign, and the reason is that there's two possible answers. You either get a positive, two positives make this number, or two negatives make that number. But if this equals 0, so then what happens is you end up having just no number here. There's no value, so you're just going to have the negative b over 2a as your solution. So you're only going to have one solution. Then you'll have no real solutions when we end up having this b squared minus 4ac equaling a negative number. So if it equals a negative, we'll have no or 0 real solutions. Later on we'll find out we could have some solutions, but they're just not real numbers. So that's what our answers are, and those are the values that we're going to come up with here. So let's take a look at this. We're just looking at the b squared minus 4ac. So it's going to be the b squared is going to be negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times c. And this makes a 64 minus 28. And you see how that's going to end up being a positive value. So you do the subtraction there, you end up getting 36. Doesn't matter what it is, it's positive 36. And so that tells me that we're going to have two solutions. And the reason, again, we have two solutions is because we have the plus and minus sign. So we do some work here. We got opposite of, or just negative 5 squared, and then minus 4 times a, which is 2, c is 16. And so you see how you're getting 25, and then this makes a much bigger number. 32 times by 4, or just 8 times by 16, gives me a 128, and you see how you're going to end up with a negative number. So when you go ahead and subtract that 25 from both sides, you get a negative 103. And again, you can't have that radical sign of the negative number. Can't find two numbers that multiply to make a negative, so we say there are no real solutions. Again, the reason is because of this negative sign right there. And so this last one, again, it's a b squared, so 4 squared minus 4ac. A is 2, c is 2. So we do some work here, we get 16 minus, this makes 8 times 2 makes 16. So when you end up with 0, what that means is we just have one solution. So those are the different types of values that we're going to have for these problems. Let's take a look at the last problem. This is actually the last problem that you'll see on the homework tonight. And it's talking about your sports team wants to take out an ad in the paper congratulating the basketball team, or your school wants to do this, on a successful season as shown at right. The area of the photo will be half. Okay, this is important right here. The area of the photo will be half the area of the entire ad. So this right here, the 7 by 5, is going to be half of the entire area. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to write an expression to represent this. So what they're doing here is they're kind of breaking things down for us. So what do we do? Well, how wide should the border be is what they're asking to start with. And what should we do? Well, what is the dimensions of the photo in the ad? Okay, so if we just look at the photo itself, and we just have that, the photo is going to end up being a 7 by 5. Those are the dimensions, 7 by 5, 7 times 5. And let W equal the width and of the photo, and L equal the length of the photo. And so that's what we'd end up seeing, is just 7 by 5. Now, what we're going to do next, though, is we're going to actually look at the entire amount. So this is 5 spaces here, and this is X here. Well, if we combine these together, that would end up giving me X plus 5. So then I have the entire photograph, I guess the entire ad here would end up having a, we'll call it the width, equals X plus 5. And then the length would end up having, well, we have 7 spaces this way and X spaces this way. You combine these together, you're going to end up having to add them. So that makes X plus 7. And so now they say, well, what do you need to do to solve the problem? Well, we know that the area of this photograph right in here needs to be half of the area of the entire item. So let's take the area of the entire item first. The X plus 5 times by the X plus 7. Well, if we wanted to set it equal to the area of the photo, which is 5 by 7, they wouldn't equal. Because again, this is going to end up being double the amount of this. So if I want those to equal, what I need to do is I need to take half of this. So now we don't like fractions, especially with quadratics, so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to multiply this equation by 2. And what that'll do is it'll cancel out the 1/2. I don't need to multiply by 2 here because everything's being multiplied. X plus 7 and X plus 5 are both being multiplied by the 1/2. But I do have to multiply this side by 2. So this is what we should have at this stage. We have this X plus 5 multiplied by this X plus 7, and this all equals 70. So at this stage, I'll let you go ahead and solve from here. You're going to use FOIL. So use FOIL and multiply, and then put it in standard form, and then use standard form. And then your choice. You could either use the quadratic formula, formula or complete the square. And either way will get you the answer. Both are about the same degree of difficulty. Completing the square is not so bad on this problem because you just have an x squared. You don't have to deal with with a 2x squared or an ax term at least. So those are the types of problems you're going to see on tonight's homework. Good luck.